Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Claiming Your Seat at the Table session. I'm Grace Rodriguez, co founder and executive director of Impact Hub Houston. And if you'd like to connect with me directly, those are my handles on Instagram and Twitter. That Grace Rodriguez on Instagram, Grace Rodriguez on Twitter. And I can also drop my um, LinkedIn in the chat. While we have a moment for people to join and settle in, um, I'll tell you a little bit about Impact Hub Houston and about me. And so, Impact Hub Houston is one of over 102 Impact Hubs around the world in over 64 countries. We are recognized by the United Nations as the world's largest network supporting entrepreneurial solutions that are aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So, basically, we help people who are doing good in the world do even better in the world. I'm also on the boards of the Houston Office of Business Opportunity. We support women and minority entrepreneurs. I'm on the board of the Houston Downtown Management District, and we are responsible for economic development in Central Houston. And I'm also on the board of Houston Exponential, which is a convening body for a lot of the startup development organizations across the greater Houston area. And then I'm in the leadership of these other entities, but you'll hear some of that in my story. So, how did I get here? It has been a real journey to get to this point. As Rose said earlier, people see themselves in you too. So, I'm going to share my story briefly, and then I'll invite you to see where our paths might have crossed and whether you think we might be sisters from other misters. First, I was born. Can you believe this? I was born in the 1900s. I don't know if you've heard that before. And if you have, feel free to share that in the chat. But I grew up in the 1900s. I never thought I was normal. So in the 1980s, I was in elementary school, and I remember being called a chink, a Jap, a gook by people that I thought were my friends. And I remember seeing my parents being harassed and spit on and told to go back to where they came from. So I never felt like I belonged. In the 90s, I went to New York for college and started working in the corporate world there in the World Trade Center. And in that really alpha male dominated environment, I really felt like I didn't belong. So the previous panels completely resonated with me. Around the end of 99, I decided to move west, and then I stopped in Sugarland to reconnect with my family and spend some time with them. But when I got to Houston, I ended up meeting up with some old friends who were DJs, and we ended up starting the Cracker Nuts DJ crew, which kept me in Houston for the next couple of years, and then I never left. So for managing the Cracker Nuts, I went on to do marketing consulting for restaurants and clubs, and then writing and editing for Rice Addict, which was an Asian American magazine, and then producing a TV show called Destination Houston and working for then Mayor Pro Tem Gordon Kwan when he was at City Council. And then when he hit his term limits, I started consulting, and then I started working out of Houston's first co-working space, and that's where I really got into community development, organizing community events and art openings and music festivals and a lot of things. And at that same time, that's when social media started becoming a thing, like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and they were starting to be adopted as tools for connecting and communicating. And so since I was working at this big co-working space, people from all backgrounds and industries converged at those events. And the friendships that I made there led to me eventually becoming director of special ops at DFJ Mercury, which is an early seed stage venture capital fund. And then I co-founded an incubator for creative professionals called C2 Create, and then became a curator for TEDx Houston, which led to me becoming the creative director for TED Active and actually working for TED. And so at Mercury, I learned about venture capital funds and Houston's investor scene and what startups needed to get their attention. And at Culture Pilot and TEDx Houston, I learned about the power of people from all walks of life to come together to co-create magical experiences, and the importance of elevating people with interesting ideas to be seen and heard. For example, at our very first TEDx Houston in 2010, Brene Brown was our first speaker, and David Eagleman was our closing speaker. And that's the talk that she refers back to when she when she gave her TED talk and wrote in her book and all of that. And so, imagining what their lives might have been like if they hadn't gone viral, if they hadn't had that stage, has made me be more conscious of how do we elevate more people? How do we provide more people with opportunities to be seen, heard, and valued? And then staying in touch with Mercury led to conversations about creating a space that supported and accelerated startups in Houston, which led to me being a co-founder of Station Houston, a tech startup hub. And then it led to a lot more opportunities that eventually, got me to where I was today. So that previous slide of all of the different logos, basically, that's the journey that I went on. So it's your turn now, and I wanted to start with reflection. Why did you choose to participate in this breakout session? And let's see, I have a poll here. If you're able to click on that, you can access it from the upper right-hand corner in the session. Um, what are the top 1 to 2 reasons that you decided to join this session? And that could be that you want to contribute more, that you might feel like your voice is unheard or underrepresented. You might feel like your ideas are not welcomed or respected. What is that reason? And if you don't find it there, if you're not able to click on it, please feel free to share it in the chat. What do you feel? Why did you decide to learn a little bit more about how to claim your seat at the table? So we're seeing some answers. You want to be a more effective community leader. Anybody else who would like to share? So Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy of Harvard University reported that the biggest cause of wasted resources in nearly every company is the second job of managing our identities, our reputations, and perceived inadequacies. And so all of the things that you're sharing here, if you feel like you want to be a more effective leader, if you feel like that your voice is underrepresented, that goes to those wasted resources. We're spending so much time trying to navigate these different aspects of our identities, our gender, cultural, national, generational, political, social differences that we really need to play up or quiet down in different environments, instead of being able to show up safely and confidently as our whole selves. And let's see, somebody else said, I have a lot to contribute and I want to step up and participate more. That's wonderful. So let's move on to the next question then. Okay, so let's move to reimagining. Take a moment to think about your answer to the previous poll. Now imagine that the issues that you want to address or the goals that you want to achieve were already accomplished and that you're looking back at the journey that you took. So let's imagine that you have a seat at the table now. Take a moment to enjoy and feel gratitude for your success, and then answer these questions as specifically as possible. What does your life look like now that you're successful, now that you have a seat at the table? And if you want to, feel free again to share your answers in the chat. How are your family and your community benefiting from your leadership? Are they thriving? Are they more successful? Are they finding more mentors? What are the outcomes of you being at the table and being a decision maker? What are you able to do now? And then what will you decide to do next? So the more specific you can be, the more you can envision this as a reality, the easier it is for you to actually start making that reality, because now you have a compass. You know what direction you want to go in. Hi, Aileen. And then so after you're done reimagining that, let's dig in and explore the real challenges here. And I'm sure that many of you had similar struggles to mine. When I saw gaps in services and support for people who wanted to do things, I worked to help fill them. And when people believed that things couldn't be done, I had to figure out how to do those things and then did them. And then when people didn't want to work together, I had to figure out how to align their goals and get them to collaborate with each other. And every time that I had ever tried to create positive change and be part of the solution, the only real problem that I encountered time and time again were the people who were in leadership roles, who were determined to stay part of the problem. It's so interesting, the conversations that we were having earlier, that the panelists were having earlier, about having a learning mindset. The people who are part of the problem were not open to new ideas. They weren't open to new approaches. They weren't open to learning and growing because they persisted in believing that all they ever knew was all they ever needed to know, despite the fact that things kept changing in the world around them. And so that inability to adapt is what led me to understand that in order to create a more inclusive and equitable world and to get people like that to listen to people like me and learn, I had to get a seat at the table. And so if there wasn't one there for me, I had to make it or make an entirely new table. So I want to ask you, It erased my poll. But my next poll was about, what do you feel is the main thing that's stopping you from having a seat at the table? So if you can, there it is. If you can share that. Let me see if the poll will show up. There you go. What is the biggest challenge that you think is stopping you from having a seat at the table? Because once you identify what this challenge is, you'll have named it and now you'll be able to start addressing it. So, do you feel that your superiors don't support you? Maybe that your peers don't support you, that you might not be aggressive or extroverted enough, and you see other people who are like that getting more support? Or do you feel like the converse, that you're just too modest or you're too introverted to step up into the spotlight? Or do you feel like you are facing real bias and discrimination in the environment that you're going into and that you want to have a seat at the table at, whether that's ethnic or racial or gender or generational? And if you're not sure, feel free to click that too. So again, if you're not able to see where that poll is in the upper right, you'll see the little three lines, and there, you should be able to click on that and access the poll. Or feel free again to drop that in the chat. Yeah, Ro, I can. Man, it's so interesting. As I was listening to the panelists earlier, how much things have not changed. It's so interesting to see how the culture continues to be set up so that people are not able to show up as authentically and wholly as they are, and to be able to be seen as leaders. So even if you are, as I think it was Ellen maybe who was talking about how we are raised to be good daughters and then good wives and good mothers, we're not really trained to be or taught to be good leaders. And as a result, when we enter the workplace, it's harder for us to understand how to communicate well so that people see us and present ourselves well so people actually see us as leaders. Yeah. I feel you, but you can still be nice and compassionate without being, w- without being off-putting and still be seen as a leader. So not knowing much about the expectations, the uncertainties. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'll close this poll and move this on to the next. So let's level up. This is the part that I would love for you to take notes and start developing your own strategies for how you can claim or create your own seat at the table. So don't assume, I put, don't let assumptions limit you. And that's your assumptions maybe, and the people around you's assumptions. So don't assume that leadership won't support you, because in this day of diversity, equity, inclusion practices, there's a lot more attention to how do we make a more diverse workforce and support more diverse leadership. If you feel like your leaders aren't supporting you, if you feel like your style of communication is demanding and rigid, or if it tends to be humble and accommodating, you might not appear as if you want your leaders' help with upward mobility, because it might appear to them that you are comfortable where you already are. So if you might come off forceful, they might think she's got it. She knows what she's doing. She doesn't need my help. If you might be humble and accommodating, people might think, oh, well, she doesn't want to step up into this leadership role. So one tactic that you could try is being more straightforward and more clear in your communication, and directly asking them to be your mentor or sponsor. It was great that somebody asked on the previous panel, how can men support women? It would be better if men actually actively looked for women to support. But if they're not doing that, and wherever you are, feel free to step up to them. Sometimes men really want to help, they just don't know how. So you can tell them how to help you. Ask them to be a mentor, ask them to be a sponsor, which is actually the next level up of a mentor, where somebody is invested in your personal and professional development and will look for opportunities to elevate you into spaces. I mentioned I was working for Gordon Kwan when he was at City Council. He was such a great sponsor for me and made sure that I got on boards, that I got included at decision-making sessions, so that I was beginning to be seen as a leader at that stage of my life. So, and an important message though is you don't have to change your style, or your style of communication, as long as you make it easier for people to understand that you want their advice and guidance to advance your career or to be elevated to a leadership role in an area that you're excited about. And then next, If you feel like your peers don't support you, don't assume that they're working against you. I've had a lot of experiences in my 30s where I thought that people were they were trying to keep me down. It was way too competitive. And I found out later that if I had just talked with them, sometimes they thought I was the threat. And it's weird because I've been told I'm intimidating, but I'm a tiny woman. Like I am like 5 feet. And I always find myself a minority among minorities. So whenever I walked into a room, I was always the only person of color, the only woman of color, the only Filipina. So doing a lot of Asian American advocacy work. Oftentimes, I was the only Filipina in those days, and people, what they were saying were their experiences weren't my experience, right? In fact, I find that a lot of our culture is shared more by Latinas than by sometimes East and Southeast Asian women. So I knew that if I wanted to accomplish big things and move mountains, I really needed more people to help me. And so I needed to build coalitions, I need to build alliances. And it takes time to build that army of supporters, but you need to start somewhere. And I highly recommend that you make that time now. So you build allies by building things together. Um, how might you find at least one ally or collaborator among your peers by engaging them in co-creating or co-leading a new initiative? Um, how can you create opportunities to elevate each other? So I mentioned earlier that I worked for TED and that I'm a TEDx organizer. So how can you create events where you invite people to the stage? And then you're giving them an opportunity to be seen, and in turn, they will look for opportunities for you to be seen. Let's see. Yep, we do have to do more work, work harder. Exactly. And unfortunately, we have to be the ones who are the solution, to our own problems until other people start helping us. And that's kind of where this comes in. The more that you start collaborating with peers, the more they start seeing you as part of a part of their team too, right? And then they're able to start helping you. In fact, at Impact Hub Houston, we do so much. I shared some of the slides, and if you're interested in looking at some of the programs that we do, we're helping facilitate the North American regional collaborations among all of the impact hubs in the US, Canada, and Latin America, actually. And then we have programs for entrepreneurs. We are doing ecosystem development, but there's just only two of us full time on the job. But we rely on our partnerships with different organizations to help us scale our impact, to help us do a lot more. We also rely on volunteers. But again, like how we look for people who are also passionate about similar kinds of things, and then we try to empower them as leaders. So people who have not had that opportunity to lead before, we help them be leaders in some of the things that we're doing. And as a result, again, they see us as part of their team, and they show their gratitude by making sure that they tell more people about who we are and what we do. And so this next assumption is that don't assume that you are not capable of claiming and holding a seat at the table because you might be quiet. I'm an introvert. Honestly, I find that advocating for causes and helping others makes it easier, though, for me to speak up. And often I try to be the last to talk, but the first to praise. And I find that as I praise other people and they're grateful that they're being seen and heard, they reciprocate. You know, I also would think about when I'm shy or I feel like I want to recede into the background, especially at events, I may try to reframe the situation and think, what will be lost if I don't speak up? Will a marginalized voice or a perspective or opinion be unheard or go underrepresented if I don't share it? So, in a lot of the spaces that I'm in, first, I look for opportunities to bring other people with me so that they are seen and heard. But if they cannot participate in it, then I make sure that the stories are heard, right? So I know that if I don't speak up, people will understand that the Filipino experience isn't the same as other Asian American experiences. They might know, women of color, our experiences are different than men of color. So if I know that if I don't speak up, all the people that I represent, their voices won't be heard. So empowered by that, it gives me the courage, I guess, and the confidence to speak up in a lot of spaces. So how might you find ways to share your thoughts that still feel authentic to you? One, you can practice talking to yourself. I have done this a lot. So I'll record myself. Yes, Aileen, thank you. I'm so glad I'm not the only one. I do record and listen to myself. Um, and then I do podcasts. Well, my own personal podcast. And I try to also refine what I'm saying. So I think of how I'm phrasing things, and then I think about which audience I'm talking to and how can I rephrase it that it's easier for them to accept. I also advocate for others. Ro, once I publish it, I will be happy to invite you. Actually, I would love for you to speak on it. Maybe we should do a podcast together. Okay, but anyway, so I do advocate for others often. Um, Prepare to share for meetings. So when you know that you're going into a meeting that other leaders are going to be in, make sure you have at least one point that you are prepared to speak up on so that people can hear your voice and they know that you want to contribute and you want that to keep that seat at the table. You can also think about what are you good at, and it might be social media, it might be knitting, it might be something that is outside of the realm of the workplace, but teach it. Offer to teach people how to do it. If it's fun, especially since people are so burned out on work and Zoom and all of this right now, the more things that are fun that you can teach, the more people might be engaged. And by teaching, you're practicing sharing your voice, but then you're also practicing having all of those eyeballs on you, right? So having that spotlight and being more comfortable with that, and then seek panels to speak on. So there are quite a few requests for speaker proposals. If you look at a lot of different types of conferences in the industries that you're in, whether it's tech or energy, healthcare, and you can offer to speak on panels and share your voice as a Filipina, as a woman of color, as whoever you are and however you what your experience is, and don't be afraid to share that. So a lot of times I hear people say that I don't have anything to contribute, but you heard these amazing women's stories earlier. You have a story that is unique to you, and so it's I think more people need to hear that. Again, our voices, our experiences as Filipinas are underrepresented. So please, and if you would like to speak, you can reach out to me, and I will definitely help find an opportunity for you to speak. And again, don't let other people's assumptions limit you. If you feel like you might be the target of bias or discrimination, for legally protected cases like gender, race, um, please go to the Fine Law Guide, and it gives you some good steps to address that. I'm not qualified to give you, legal advice, but I would recommend seeking legal advice and talking to somebody about it because we often don't report these cases. Um, I think one of the reasons why women continue to experience these challenges in the workplace is because we are intimidated by other people to not do it. There's that a saying that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, and we don't want to be hammered down. So please do talk to somebody though, because the only way that these issues can be addressed is if they are reported. And then for other cases that are not protected, like social bias, generational bias, seek people to befriend who are from those communities and who might be different from you so that you can start finding common ground and you can help dispel some of those biases. It's really interesting. So I'm going to be 50 next year, and I find that people still think I'm a lot younger than I am. So I befriend people who look a lot older or think that they are a lot older than I am, and I befriend people who are a lot younger than I am. One, to help the boomers know that all young people are not scary. We're not trying to replace you, and kick you into a nursing home. And we have a lot of really great ideas to share, and a lot of young people are solving some really interesting problems with great solutions. And then with younger generations, I try to let people know that um, uh, boomers, try to let the Zoomers that boomers aren't all old and stodgy and stuck in their ways. We are open to them, to their ideas, as long as they approach us also with respect, because we have accomplished a lot, and everybody deserves respect, right? And again, the burden shouldn't be on us to teach others to be inclusive, but really decide how you want to engage authentically, and then lead by example when you enter spaces and when you create those relationships. Um, let's see, I forgot who I was talking with earlier in the panel earlier, but that idea of compassion and making sure that you are leading with compassion shows other people how they can lead with compassion. And so this is the session where we're going to start. This is part, I guess, that we're going to start creating your strategy and really claim your seat at the table. So remember, it took 20 years of me, from 2000-ish trying new things, starting new things, failing forward to have a network of peers that includes government officials, CEOs, celebrity thinkers, and grassroots doers. And I want that time to be much shorter for you because I'd love for you to get to this stage faster and better than I ever could. So please write your answers down to these questions or open up a document on your laptop and start writing them down for yourself. And then you can keep it, and refer back to it as you are on your journey and refine it along the way. So identify, what seat do you want? Is it a seat at a general chamber of commerce like the Greater Houston Partnership? Is it a seat in government? Are you interested in running for office as an elected official, or on your school board? Is it in a place of community leadership at a community organization or a nonprofit organization? Whatever that seat is, describe it as specifically as you can. So again, like, you can see that goal and you're able to know, this is what I'm working towards. And then really think about, why do you want that seat? What do you gain by getting that seat? Sometimes with great power comes great responsibility, and having a seat at a table means that you not only get to be a leader, but you must also serve those you lead, right? And this often comes with trade-offs and sacrifices of time and resources. So I've often been asked, why don't I run for office? And it's because my life would no longer be my own, right? I need to make sure that I'm helping all of the constituents that are in my district. So what would you gain by it, but all in the positive aspect, and what would you gain by it in the kind of detracting negative aspect? What are you willing to sacrifice for it? Are you willing to sacrifice time with your family, time with friends? Are you willing to sacrifice days that you can just go on vacation? So make sure that you really want that seat at the table, and you're clear which table and which seat you want before you start all of this work to try to achieve it. Second, ideate who can help you get that seat. What can you do to demonstrate that you're the best person for that seat? Start thinking of ways you can open doors and invite other people to join you in doing the things that you want to do. So look for opportunities to collaborate with leaders and position yourself as their peer. Again, once we start creating initiatives like Station Houston or these big events, when I invited people to co-coordinate those types of events, now they see me as their peer. And if I invite them to speak on stage, now they see me as someone who provides them with opportunities, which makes them also want to be more supportive of what I do, right? And look for where your goals align with those of your peers and present them with those kinds of opportunities for you to work together to get those goals. Next, how can you position yourself as next in line for that seat? So who is going to be the ultimate decision maker, or the influence the decision maker, that you can then start developing a relationship with, so you can show that you are going to be the next in line for that seat, or that now that you've demonstrated you're the best person, how do you show that you should be the next in line for that seat? And it could be that there's a growing tide. We need more women at that table. We need more people of color at that table. How can you start making that pitch, that case? And we'll get to the pitching part in the moment. But again, think about, how do you position yourself as the person who is, the default. You should be the default person to get that seat at the table. And then think about who you can include in terms of succession, right? So it's not just the people who are making the decisions about who gets that seat, but also who's going to support you. How can you say that you have this groundswell of people, this community of people who want you to have that seat? And so think about, who do you need to start mentoring or sponsoring, who can then be groomed to take your seat so you can move on to another seat, so you can move on to a higher seat. And I find that finding more young people, or more people who are new to the spaces that I'm in, whether it's tech or impact, helping them learn how to be me, and like how to take on the roles that I've been, has been so empowering, because I can now delegate things to them that they are excited about doing and that they are capable of doing. So I can do things that are more challenging and open more opportunities, both for me and for them. Thank you, Ro. And so if sometimes, you just have to show them where you fit in. So if there's not a seat that you feel like is for you, or that other people feel like is not for you, maybe you have to create it, you know? And you could think about what program or project or initiative could you start that would position you as the leader. And it's so interesting because I know that in the Filipino community, and having been involved in it since I was little, my dad was a co-founder, I think, of the Filipino-American Metropolitan Houston, FAMH, Filipino Association of Metropolitan Houston there, and then PASA, the Sports Association. There has always been a lot of tension within the Filipino community that if I don't agree with you, I'm going to go off and start my own thing. So this isn't about that. I think that we need to come together and support each other more. But what I think about is that what program, project, or initiative is filling a gap that exists. So identify gaps in the community or find ways to help the community to work better together. So maybe the movement that you want to start is collaboration. How can we be more collaborative and supportive community? And then by starting that, it positions you as a leader because now you're inviting all of these people to the table. And that's kind of one of the things I do is ecosystem development. And it can be the fastest way for you to have a seat at the table by creating the table yourself. But at this point, you have to make sure that you've already built that small army of movers, shakers, supporters, and collaborators. And that you make sure that they're ready and willing to help you. So if you have resources to offer them, if you are able to provide them with titles so that other people take them seriously, do that. I made sure that Michelle, who is my co-founder at Impact Hub Houston, she didn't call herself that, but I made sure to keep calling her that so she would feel and know that she is a co-creator of our organization. She was thinking of having a title of operations manager, and I was like, no, you're the deputy director. You have to be seen as as higher and as equal as I am, so that if I'm not available, you are able to take on that role, and people will treat you with the same kind of respect. So in this world, titles still matter. So think about how you are empowering other people by giving them titles of respect, so that they also then reciprocate by showing you respect. As an example of this, of creating your seat, I mentioned Diversity Fund Houston earlier, or you saw the logo on my slide of one of the things I'm on the board of. This past December, I spoke at the launch of Diversity Fund Houston. It's a new venture capital fund that's founded by Black entrepreneurs. And when they introduced me, they said that they started the fund after a conversation they had with me a couple of years earlier. They had come to me at Station Houston, which was the tech startup hub that I co-founded, and they asked me how we could start getting more angel investors and venture capital funds to invest in more minority entrepreneurs. And I told them, you can get them to start investing in more founders of color by starting your own fund and showing them how to do it. And then they did it, right? So I'm an advisor for the fund now. And it's a real world example of how you can make your own table. And Filipinos are doing it too. So this past week, Maria Racho from Chicago has teamed up with Diane Yu from Houston, and they're launching Philcore Capital. It's the first venture capital fund of its kind to invest in Filipino and Korean founders. And I would recommend getting in touch with them. Let's see, I couldn't find their website or else I would share it with you. But if you reach out to me, I'd be happy to connect you with them. But again, Maria was sharing her story about how she was supporting other people's funds and asking them to invest in more Filipino founders. And she was like, you know what? I'm the change that we need to see. And so she decided, I'm going to start my own fund. And she went through this VC lab program from Founder Institute to start learning how to do it. And now she's launching her own fund. So this is awesome. I think she might be the first Filipina I know of that is co-founding a venture capital fund. Yes, Aileen, absolutely. I will share a copy with my slides with you. Okay. So I mentioned earlier about the pitch. How do you present yourself? How do you communicate what you want to achieve well so that other people can support you? And this idea of creating a clear pitch is to help you connect and communicate confidently. You can read this slide. It will make it easier for the other person to understand the value that you offer and how they could benefit from including you at the table or for supporting you. And it makes it also easier for people to remember and repeat so they can introduce you to other people or refer people to you. And just quick guidelines for creating that pitch. One, obviously make it simple. You'll be tempted to use a lot of trendy buzzwords, and I hear this all the time. Or you might want to use a title like I am the executive director of Impact Hub Houston. Actually don't prefer to introduce myself that way. I like to say I help do-gooders do greater, and then that usually piques people's interest, and they start asking more questions. And that's what you want. You want people to ask those questions of you. So speak like a human, use short words, and use only words that you would use in conversation with a friend over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. So make it simple. Second, make it short. Use as few words as possible. So keep it to 8 if that's, if you can. It's just a guideline, it doesn't have to be 8, but you need to be able to do it in one short breath, because if it's too long, then you have to remember too much and other people will then have to remember too much. Make it inviting. So make it so that people want to ask you more questions. You're inviting their questions. Don't try to explain everything you do. And this is a challenge for people, especially who are experts in their field, who are leaders in their field. The tendency is wanting to educate people more, because we believe that through education, people can make better decisions. But oftentimes people prefer a dialogue over a monologue. I know I do, which is why I'm hoping that more people will comment in the chat, because I really wish that we were having a conversation instead of me just talking at you. But that's okay. This is what we're working with. So engage people in dialogue, because when people start asking you questions, you'll also learn and be able to answer what they want to know versus what you guess that they want to know. So if you have any questions for me, please drop them in the chat. I would be more than happy to go off script and then make this more of like a consultative conversation versus a presentation. But yes, invite their questions and get to know what they want to know. And then put yourself in their shoes when you're crafting your pitch. If you create it as if you're directly talking to the decision maker, they'll mentally insert themselves in your statement. So if I introduce myself as I help do-gooders do greater, and you're like, you know what, I like doing good. I want to do more. I want to do greater. Maybe Grace can help me. That's the kind of place that you want to get to with your pitch. And even if the person that you're talking to is not your ultimate target, your introduction, that simple pitch will plant an idea that can open the door for that. So maybe you want to talk to, let's say, the CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership. You can talk to the people who are in that person's sphere of influence and then say, hey, I just want to help create a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable Houston, for businesses to come here. Or I help do-gooders do greater, or I want to build an ecosystem that supports diverse entrepreneurs. Whatever, like simple. The first line wasn't that simple, so sorry. But the more simple that it can be, the helping do-gooders do greater, building ecosystems for diverse entrepreneurs, the more people associate your name with that simple line, the easier then it is them to say, hey, Bob, I know this woman, Grace, and she helps do-gooders do greater, and she wants to create equitable ecosystems. You're working on that. You should talk with her. And believe me, that's actually happened quite a few times. So once you have a solid pitch, just keep practice adapting it to diverse audiences and people from different ages, people from different breadths and depths of expertise, because you want to start learning how to improve it on the fly. And for example, I gave you that example of I say I help do-gooders do greater, and that usually sparks conversation. It usually surprises people, and even though sometimes people can't repeat it back to me verbatim, they usually refer back to me, or they'll go to my social media to find that phrase. But if somebody wants something more specific, and this goes to that adapting it on the fly, I'll tell them I build ecosystems to support diverse entrepreneurs. And this is me as an individual. If I'm talking about Impact Hub Houston, we say that we help change makers be seen, heard, and valued. And so, this is your time to start doing it. I would really love for you, if you have been thinking about this. Yes, Ro, awesome. I was going to ask for you all who are here in this session to do that. Fill in the blanks. What do you do? How do you provide some benefit? Rose said, I want to help amplify the voices and stories of people from all walks of life. That is wonderful, Ro. And can't wait to help you with that or help support you in doing that. Thank you, Daniela. And we're nearing the top of the hour. So if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions, please again feel free to drop that in the chat. And here's my contact information again. If you want to connect with me, I'll also um, drop my contact information in the chat. I'm going to say thank you for spending time with me. Oh, there's a note. Can we extend the breakout session until 12:10? Okay, we can do that. What would be most helpful for you in this extended time that we have? Would you like to practice your pitches? Would you like to discuss maybe some more options for how you can create your seat at the table um, or claim your seat at the table? Which one, Ro? More options? Okay. One thing I would love for those of you who are in the session now to share in the chat, what have you tried and not found successful? And I'll share with you while you're doing that, while you're thinking about that and entering, what have you tried that has not been successful for you? I'll share with you what I have tried that has been successful. So one thing that's been successful, again, is offering help. So when I was earlier in my career, let's say when I was in my 30s, 20s, 30s, I love to help people. So it's like the potluck thing, and you get family together and you have these organizations and everybody pitches in to set up and then clean up and everybody acts as a host. So I've always liked to help solve problems and pitch in and help. And when I got into this opportunity, showing up at different, let's see, nonprofit organizations, um, getting the ability to have this role with Gordon Kwan at City Council actually came from that, came from volunteering with OCA Greater Houston, which is a Pan-Asian American advocacy organization. So tapping into the broader Asian American community helped me get a role at in government and in media, right? So at Rice Addict, and then I was also producing Gordon's TV show Destination Houston. And so that showing up, wanting to help, got me that opportunity. Showing up, continuing to help. So let's say when I became a co-organizer for TEDx Houston, we had this ability to go to the TED conference, and I was talking to some of the leaders at TED about how could we engage the broader community to help participate and co-create in creating the experience of the event. And that led to them saying, well, would you want to do it? And then I got the job being as a creative director for one of the conferences at TED. So thank you. So it's I think this innate part of our culture, I guess, Filipino culture, is that we tend to want to help and pitch in and support. So how do you do that at a higher level? And I think that if you have ideas of how to make something better, as long as it's not preaching, right? I think people don't like to be preached at. But if it's in a genuine attempt to try to improve something, like, can we do something? Could we invite the community to help co-create this? Could we do a roundtable to invite the community to share their feedback and their ideas? Because sometimes the best ideas are from the people who are not at the table, the people who are actually experiencing the challenges at the ground floor, right? At the grassroots level. And a lot of times the people at the grassroots level who are facing the problems are actually creating solutions themselves. But if they had more funding, if they had more mentors, if they had some tech experts, those solutions might turn into something to startups or businesses that could help them and their communities thrive. So, speaking up of how can we help people and help them at scale can lead to a lot more opportunities. I mentioned earlier about finding people to mentor. That has been very successful for me in terms of opening up my network to people who are creating those solutions. So mentoring startup entrepreneurs, mentoring advanced degree college students or college students, and even high school students. How far How early in somebody's career do you want to start mentoring them? And then how do you help them think through the challenges that they're facing and develop solutions to it? That has helped them continue to look to me for support, which means that now I have a broader network of people. And as they grow in their careers, they are able to reciprocate and help me and help the other people that I'm helping. So an example of that is the new executive director of Houston Exponential is someone who used to work for me at Station Houston, Serafina, and the new director of the Softex Venture Studio, which has $40 million backing it, used to work for me at Station, right? And these are people that I'd mentored, and now they're in roles of leadership where now we can really collaborate at this higher level. So sometimes one of the best ways of creating your seat at the table is to find other people to invite to the table that you are developing. Rose, what is one of the biggest challenges that you face in your mission, and how did you work to overcome it? I'll tell the biggest challenge that I face is people in my 30s not taking me seriously, right? So even though I'd accomplished a lot and I was capable of a lot, it was hard for people to take me seriously because I don't look my age, right? And I'm sure as Filipinas, you all probably look at least 10 to 20 years younger than you really are. Like I said, I'm going to be 50 next year. Nobody ever believes me. So showing up in spaces where people didn't assume that I was an intern with less experience, um, that that I had the breadth of experience that I had, that has been a challenge, which is why the allies and sponsors are really helpful because they can speak for me. It's harder for someone to take me directly seriously. And also I feel uncomfortable saying like, oh, I went to this college and, I founded all of these things. I don't really enjoy saying that for myself. So if other people know that, who are my friends and allies, and they speak on my behalf, one, it sounds more credible for all of them. And then two, takes a huge is a huge relief, right? It takes a huge burden off my shoulders because now I don't have to do it. But I think the biggest success to me is having heard in the community other people saying, "Oh, this person said that you help them turn around their startup, you help them launch this new nonprofit organization." Hearing those people actually activating on some of the mentorship and advice I'd given them in the past has shown that it's worked. So yes, that the credibility issue for women who have advanced degrees, make sure you include them on everything, and don't feel shy about doing that or saying that or asking people to call you doctor. I tend to call everybody by their first name, even if it's people that I haven't met yet, and it makes them feel more. I found it makes them feel more comfortable, right? So the the perspective that I take, it comes from my family and from the Filipino community, honestly, but also was codified when I was working for TED, because at our conference, when people showed up the very first day, the very first session that everybody was together, we would tell them, "Welcome home." Because we wanted the space to feel like home. We wanted everybody to feel like family. And so I find that when I take that approach to any space I walk into and I feel like this is my home, you are all my guests, and now I'm going to make sure that you feel comfortable. And that approach has helped for some reason makes people feel like I'm the person that's leading everything, even though I'm not the leader or organizer for some of the events I participate in. But again, like just feeling comfortable in your space, welcoming people into it, positions you as the leader of that space, right? As at the head of the table. And then that has helped people feel like I am more credible because I'm so comfortable. Usually, people who have not done something tend to be more anxious and nervous. And so when they see that anxiety or nervousness, they feel like you must be new. So again, like getting to that place of comfortable. And then Tarsha said, I have the same experience. I look younger than I am. I've had allies to open doors for you. That is wonderful, Tarsha. And then I hope you're also opening doors for other people too. Um, it just becomes this virtuous cycle of support. And Aileen said, I agree that we have to create our seat or create the opportunity where we fit in rather than forcing ourselves to where we are obviously not wanted or not fitted. And Eileen, that's so true. If there's a space that's really toxic, I don't recommend you going into it unless you have the tools to go into it, unless you have the training and the preparation to make sure that it's not going to traumatize you. But I've within the past few years, especially with the political divide, um, I've tried to have conversations with people I do not agree with. And I've taken the approach, especially in conversations of inclusion and equity, of where I'm not talking with people who are also women and people of color, because we are not the problem, right? The people who have the problem are tend to be white men. So how do we help them become part of the solution? And my approach is I need to talk with more white men and help them understand we want them to be our allies. We want them to help us and support us. We're not There's one part of accountability to make sure that anybody who, needs to address their bias, and if, they have racist behavior, they need to address that. But what I've heard from some people is that we know what not to do. What do we do? And I think that's the part that where we can be really helpful is telling them, here's what you can do. I'm not gonna like I don't have the energy anymore to tell people this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. What I can tell you is that this is how I'm working to make more inclusive and equitable spaces. This is how I'm mentoring and sponsoring more women and people of color so that they can elevate into levels of leadership, which they say is their goal, right? So if they want to do that, achieve that too, because this is what they say and their corporations say it, then here is how you can work with me to make sure we're elevating and uplifting more women and people of color. And so, yeah, so I have those conversations again. I seek white men. When we first started our organization, Impact Hub Houston, we had no white men on our board. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be more inclusive and invite them in. And so that they can also go into their spaces, into their communities. And interestingly, the two of them are veterans. So they can go into military spaces and then continue evangelizing that and sharing their learnings with other people. And then Aileen, I saw that you came on.
Yes, I didn't realize I have to turn on my my camera. But I love everything that you've said. Very, very helpful information. I know I've been typing on the chat box because I don't want to interrupt you from whatever you're saying because it's really I want to chew on everything that you're saying. Appreciate it. So, did it say until what time are we supposed to be here?
In the speaker chat, it said that can we extend to
Okay.
12:10?
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was late coming in a while ago, which is not it's I think it's the internet or something that I couldn't get in. But I love that you already started. You are truly a woman of confidence, and you're truly a leader yourself, and a true picture of a strong woman. And I that's what I really see when I look at you and when I hear you. That's what I see and that's what I hear. And I'm glad that we have some participants here also actively engaged. It's a really good conversation here with you. Okay, so we have last 5 minutes. So, is there anything else that you'd like to? Oh, there's a question here. Oh, that's you, right? Okay, yeah. So, is there any question that we missed here? I'm looking at a Q&A and I don't see
Yes.
any.
How do you deal with conflict in a work or collaborative project?
Okay, that's from Ro. Yes. How do you deal with conflict in a work or collaborative Actually, this is very challenging because there's so many ideas. There's so many people who probably think that theirs is the greatest, brightest idea. So how are you going to deal with that? So for me, I just listen. I let them speak, and I let them also listen to what others are saying. Because sometimes, if you just let them hear what others are saying, not interrupting them, they get this idea. Oh, wait a minute! I think that's better than what I just said. So they get this realization already, and because as much as possible, I don't want to embarrass anybody during the collaborative project activity, or sometimes I don't want to make them feel that theirs is not the greatest idea. So it's just, I think it's how you make that conversation, choose the right words maybe, and try to make everybody feel that they're all equally important. I think that's very important for me. Okay. Um, yes.
And Ro, if I can add to the dealing with conflict in a work or collaborative project, I always revert back to what is the common goal, right? What are we really trying to achieve? So I think the challenge is when people start to get mired into the interpersonal conflict, it's because they've stopped having their eyes on the prize, right? So I always go back to what we're trying to do is build a more inclusive and equitable environment. How is this helping that? If you and I not communicating well, not agreeing on something is not advancing us towards that goal, then we need to take a pause and reflect on it and really think about what is being miscommunicated, and then how do we shift back our focus on what can we do together to achieve the goal. Because ultimately, everybody's different, and so personalities are not going to always jive, and you just have to get beyond the personality. It's tough, but especially if you politically don't agree with somebody. But I think progress can be achieved if we just say, this is the one thing we can agree on. We can at least make that happen. Aileen, do you want to answer Jill's question? What advice can you give to women from LGBTQ who want to take a seat in the world?
Just be brave. I mean, feel that you deserve that spot and show what you can do, because others, I'm sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, for me, my experience, we're all equal. When we're on the table, we're all equal. We have everything that, well, we can share. You have something that you can share. I have something that I can share. So don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid of what others are going to say, because if you know that you are right, and if you know that you have the ability to do something, and that you have the power to do that, they'll see it. I mean, you don't even have to say anything. You'll shine. It was They say, shine bright like a diamond. So they'll and yeah, and others will speak for you if they know you personally. They know how your capabilities. They know you as a leader. They will speak for you. You don't even have to say a word. Others are gonna be saying those words for you. So that's what I realized. And as a minority, I remember being in a group of people. I'm just being quiet, and everybody's talking. Like everybody knows everything. So that's how it works in a table like that. And we have a table of all leaders. They brought all their achievements and everything on the table, and you're just being quiet, and then let them talk. And then when it's your time to talk, make sure that they can hear you. You have a strong voice, you have conviction, and once they hear what you're going to say, they will listen and they will realize, oh, she is a great person. I think it's just not, I don't know, talking at the same time others are talking. That's loud and a lot of noise. So just wait for your turn to talk, and then when you start talking, talk as if you have the whole world on your hand. You're in control. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, Grace. Right?
Yeah, and Jill, I also think that unfortunately, you have to do a little bit more research. So if you find those people who are the decision makers, who are the leaders that you need to build relationships with, you have to look on their social media and find those who've already demonstrated that they are allies um, you know, to who you are and to the LGBTQ community, and then approach them, right? So if you're I know it's a challenge, right? Because I was raised Catholic, and so for those within the Catholic community who feel like that it's a lifestyle and it is wrong, it can be very challenging to find allies. But again, I think you can find some people like me. I'm happy to throw down for you, um, to see who can help me get elevated in the world. I would also recommend, if you can find, there are chambers of commerce, LGBTQ chambers of commerce. There at least is one in Houston. So it's a way of starting to connect with people who might be able to help you in your career as well.
Yes. Well, thank you. It's 12:11. I guess we have to say our last piece. Do you have any last words, Grace, to our participants today?
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you. And we have to see you on the other, I don't know. This is new to us. I mean, for me, the virtual world like this, but it's very interesting. I'll see you somewhere there in the next session. All right. Thank you, Grace. I really appreciate your time and effort and all the knowledge and experience and expertise that you shared with us today. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.